'Twas a late 65 at the old Wolsey yard. She was commissioned to hold the black tar. We built the Northumbria there on the bar. Roll, Northumbria, roll. For when the Egyptians they closed the Red Sea, the call came on high from the powers that be to build a royal monster right down to the quay. Roll, Northumbria, roll, me boys, roll, Northumbria, roll. Carpathia, vengeance, celestial call. She was the tanker to outsize them all. From the banks of the Mersey to the port of Halal. Roll, Northumbria, roll. And fair Princess Anne threw a bottle of wine and watched as the giant sat down in the Tyne. Oh, what lay ahead could no mortal divine. Roll, Northumbria, roll, me boys, roll, Northumbria, roll. And it's one for the hot sun above, two for the empire we love, and it's three for the fire that burns down below. Roll on, Northumbria, roll, roll, Northumbria, roll. So come, all good workmen, beware the command that comes down on high from the desk of a man who's never held steel or torch in his hand. Roll, Northumbria, roll. From atop a wild breaker, the cracks in her frame spill their black guts all across the wild main, and she limped away through an ocean of flame. Roll, Northumbria, roll, me boys, roll, Northumbria, roll. And it's one for the hot sun above, two for the empire we love, and it's three for the fire that burns down below. Roll on, Northumbria, roll, Northumbria, roll. What's up, y'all? Let's get into it. Why are people pretending that the Ghibli AI is new? The Pixarification filter is like 2 or more years old now. What in the world? I'm so sick of dwarves being shoehorned into every fantasy setting ever conceived. I'm so sick of DEI for dwarves, man. I hate to go off, but dwarves are disgusting, canonically pedophiles. They're baby brains, spiteful little cretins. The one good thing is that certain leagues of dwarves are industrious craftsmen that create some of the most beautiful things in all of the fantasy world, but not all of them. And all of them have this horrific, nasty attitude from living underground all the time, which is like, you know, you go back into this Socratic cave, you know, with the lights flickering on the wall. That's how to dwarf max. That's not acceptable. There's this thing I call it my dream hack, where I set my alarm early and press the snooze button 12 times. Every time it gives me a different dream. The only problem is my retention is poorer, so I can't augur my dreams as well when I do that. So, you know, is it really a dream hack? More of an exploit, which every exploit has negative consequences for the exploiter, right? Everything that's worth doing is worth doing well. I really wish I could get 3 days ahead on my notes and record multiple episodes at once, uploading them on a timer to afford myself some decompression time. But it is what it is. I stay up on the ball. I keep going. And it, you know, keeps me in line. Day to day, I go, well, gotta do this. Take notes, because I just have these thoughts regardless. Take the notes, do my stream, continue on, and I'll see where it takes me. Did you know that at the end of Rocky 3, it reads, "This film is dedicated to our brave freedom fighters and the Mujahideen"? And that's the Afghanistan sort of Al-Qaeda forces, by the way. And if you know, George H.W. Bush was good friends with Saddam Hussein, right? It's no wonder literally nobody on the world stage trusts us. Nor should they, unless we drastically change things. I'm less worried about war with Iran than most, since we haven't yet invaded Mexico, and it's right there. And the Patriot Act is lapsed without renewal, you see, preventing extra-congressional declarations of war. Now, if you go back and you study what Operation Desert Storm Desert Shield was, it was an operation, ergo, you didn't need congressional approval. So, but that was when politics was much less noisy, the political consensus was much more solid, and the deep state as it stood, as it still sort of lingers, although it is transforming into a techno, techno-feudal, with the sort of a Ponzi scheme of technocracy that is actually becoming our real deep state, centered in Tel Aviv, mind you. It had much more of a unification before to prevent anything like impeachment processes. You never know. Coming up on April 1st, we're going to find out a lot about what the Trump administration really plans on doing. So just hold on till then to figure out what's going on. Our country is actually incredibly weak. I know it doesn't seem that way at first, but you actually start doing the research and you actually start running the numbers and you find out there's a very thin line between what we have and what we could lose to make everything collapse. There are so many people up top that are weak-minded. There are so many in the middle that are weak-willed. There are so many in the bottom that are weak-bodied. Oil rigs alone does not a country make. Destruction alone does not strength made. It would take sacrificing the cruelty so many have become accustomed to in order to reconstruct America's greatness. It would take genuine investment our wealth hoarders are terrified of. AI won't solve it. It's not even a gamble. It doesn't even come close. It's just a distraction. It's just a hypnotic method of distracting people. That's it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be recycling things that are 2 or 3 years old in order to take people's eyes away from the things that are pressing in on, just look at the signal gate, for God's sakes. Like, that shouldn't be happening. I hate to rant. I really do, but I gotta go off. From top down, our country is rheumatic, which means that it's attacking itself. It's divided, and it's terrified. You see every strata of society in America terrified. The rich are terrified of losing their wealth. The middle class are terrified of losing their position in the tenuous, smushed middle. And the bottom are terrified of losing their lives. They have been genuinely terrorized. And the saddest thing in the world is that it's our own people. That's why it's rheumatic. No amount of executive orders or deportations or moving tax dollars around or otherwise, or gold, or whatever, is going to fix our stagnant economy. It's not going to fix our dead birth rate. It's not going to fix the insane zeitgeist. It's just scam artists. All the way down. Everyone upselling their capabilities and going their own way. That's not a country. That's a collection of individuals with selective cliques. I'm just glad that everyone is armed because Ukraine was a working country, wasn't rheumatic. First person reports that people were out with their families, celebrating holidays, enjoying their lives. Food was cheap, housing was cheap, people were happy, despite the fact that they lived in a horrible place. But they got drafted into their own self-destruction, which is why it just breaks my heart when I see well-meaning people simping for the Zelensky state of Ukraine when Zelensky came into office on a message of peace. If the modus operandi of our economy continues to be trade fiat around and liquidate legacy work, I'm not worried about any long-term contracted war. We'll fold very quickly. That's why we only target civilians. That's why we only target podunk farmers out in the middle of the desert. And if you go back and study the last time we actually had a real contracted war against a very small country with a coalition, mind you, of like 20 different people, it was against Iraq. And wow-wee, the numbers are scary compared to what we actually have, compared to what it takes to build one of these F-35s that are so expensive. It's not pretty. I'm not trying to get people worked up or anything. I'm just ranting, and I'm sorry. Just feel like ranting at the moment. The cream rises to the top, but so does the scum. And what people on the tippy top have done to the majority of the American populace, essentially everyone in arm's reach, is why our country is seemingly on the precipice of doom. Call me a commie if you want. But the cruelty on top, the criminality down below, and the complicity in the middle is not going to bind together due to any level of conflict. It will crumble, as it should. I do feel awful for the military, though. And autistically obsessing over tech will do nothing for the long term. The Soviet Union indulged all the sick power fantasies we are today. And just look where it got them. You think by the nature of being capitalist will thrive with the same tactics and the same behavior? Both are modernity. I hate to enlighten you on that, pal, but both communism and capitalism are wellsprings of modernity and modern thinking. And in many ways, since the 90s, most of the world stage is stuck in a postmodern rut where they don't remember where they came from. And nor do they seem to care. Now, you see a little bit of a revival of this recently. I'm part of it. But it's rough. We needed a healer. We don't need a warmonger. So I'm reserving my judgment until I see officially what the heck's going on. As I said, Yemen we've been in war with for 14 years. If we could find some way to achieve an objective goal that will save money and reduce the amount of wars that future presidents can wage by ending the war in Yemen, that would be great. As I said, the one good thing that Biden did was end the war in Afghanistan. As sloppy as it was getting out, that means that no future president can get into Afghanistan without congressional approval, although they did have congressional approval last time. If you go back into the 90s and you read the reports and the news, it was about liberating girls so that they could get educations. And I hate to be that guy, but most women don't benefit in the very long term from being active pillars of the workforce. And I'm not saying women are weak. Women are stronger. By the time a woman has had 2 kids or 3 kids, or even 1 kid, she's had stomach aches that no man has ever experienced. And in that way, she is stronger. She's just stronger in a different way. It doesn't mean she's better at sports, but who cares who's better at sports? Sports are not going to save anything. Sports are not going to preserve anything. It is just ephemeral. It's the crust. It's not the core, you see. If Trump wants to take us off a cliff, so be it. I too am disgusted with how we've ordered ourselves. You think, I know what I voted for, okay? I'll speak for myself. I know what I voted for. Which is against Ron DeSantis, who is more of a reserved version of Hegseth. In fact, they both worked at Guantanamo. And a significantly more Zionist version of Vance, who seems like a decent guy. Even when he leaks his text messages, he seems like a much, much better person than a vast majority of these creeps. So, let's get onto something a little bit more lighthearted. Let's go back into history, shall we? I've hated Halloween for a very long time, right? So, it's the day that Martin Luther nailed his 95 feces to the door at Wittenberg. Some points were sound, others not so much. But the way he went about it damned Germany, paved the way for Marx, and Hitler would continue his long-term legacy of purging the peasants and replacing the ideology in the region, you see. But back to Halloween. It's the same day, Halloween, the 31st. This is the same reason why the British invented an orgiastic and devilish celebration to supersede All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, which come November 1st, October 31st, if I'm not mistaken, maybe November 1st, November 7th. Can't quite remember off the top of my head. Apologies, excuse me. It is difficult when you try to learn Catholicism when your entire life you've been steeped in Anglican propaganda. I'm not even saying that like Lutheran Protestantism is all that bad, but Anglicanism is rough and it's absolutely devious. And I'll get into that in just a second. I appreciate, the main issue, all aesthetics aside, it's a day where children are poisoned in mass. That's why I don't like it. That's why I haven't liked it for many, many years. And I finally figured out why I felt so sick after celebrating that holiday, because it does make you sick. It's a sickly holiday. And you know what? Going back to it, I appreciate the autistic honesty of Martin Luther in many ways, but he turned into a real mean son of a gun when he got older. Whereas John Calvin of Geneva was a real demon, likely of Jewish Burgundian stock. Calvin, being a late Celtic derivation of Cohen, chaos and fire followed him. Anglicanism, on the other hand, was super, super devious. Political assassinations had been plaguing the British Isles for 1,000 years, but what Anglicanism did in the open was ape the Catholic Church in every way, keeping the beauty, unlike Calvinists, and good for them, but replacing Mary and the saints with lords and ladies, worshipping the world. This is the big Virginia-Maryland split. If you didn't know, Virginia was named after the Virgin Queen of Britain, and Maryland was named after the Virgin Mary. There's a big reason behind that split. It's very deep. When I said Pius XIII, like a dozen episodes back or so, I know why. I was jumbling Leo XIII, who was an excellent pope around the turn of the 20th century. Numbers, not my strong suit. One time I accidentally said 4th Legion instead of 6th Legion, or 6th Legion instead of 4th Legion. Whoopsie. In Warhammer lore. It's easy to mix up Roman numerals, but numbers aren't my strong suit, right? But hey, the people that say fascism works by erasing and supplanting history are starting to grasp its flaws. They're starting to get why pseudo-fascism without any of the cultural backbone can be very, very detrimental. Let me elucidate, by the way, on what I mentioned yesterday about the Garden of Jannah. I took willpower to see. I wasn't just stumbling into it, but I did not know what I was searching for. And it's funny, because the delirium of antihistamines is usually the most horrifying thing that you can go through. When people hallucinate on psychedelics, they know that they're hallucinating. When people hallucinate on deliriants, they do not know that they are hallucinating. Little tiny bits of clarity superseded by memory loss, and mostly just pure, ultra schizophrenic delusion. Not just plain schizophrenic, but ultra schizophrenic. And quite frankly, delusion should be in its own box, separate from schizophrenia. Because I know a few schizophrenic people that are completely undiluted. They are very scientific minded, and that keeps them grounded, and they're very adept at controlling their brains to prevent those sorts of delirium, and in fact go the opposite direction and be very, very grounded and very, very technical. I'm sure some of the greatest minds of all time have been schizophrenic. But some of the greatest minds of all time have also been autistic when it comes to mechanical crafting and things like that. I don't think Elon Musk is really autistic. I think he's just childish. I think he's just permanently stunted. And that sucks. But, maybe give that guy a decade and see how it turns out. Maybe it's all right. Maybe it's a horrible nightmare. Who knows, man? I don't really, I wouldn't bet on it. But back to Jana. What I saw was a perfectly ordered yet beautifully condensed garden. It was like a natural sprawl. Balanced chaos, perfectly metered order that stretched on forever in perfect clarity. Green, blue, and white being the key themes. And it was gorgeous, and I remember very distinctly, even though it's hard to grasp, the grandeur of it. And it took me a very long time to figure out that that's what it was. I had to do my studies to figure that out. I had no idea at the time. Well, this is a good episode for today. Hope you all have a good. Cheers.